2 July 2020, and today I want to give you an update on the statements by the Minister of Defence of Zimbabwe, Oppah Muchinguri. She said the Zimbabwe military is now so under-resourced that they're failing to patrol the borders of Zimbabwe. So she said Zimbabwe has got borders the length of about 3,000 kilometers, and they're failing to patrol these borders because they don't have resources, they don't have vehicles, they cannot put soldiers on the ground because the soldiers do not have rations. So soldiers have got nothing to eat, which is a state that we've never been in as Zimbabwe. And so I want to give you more information about that. So 3,000 kilometers, she says basically Zimbabwe military is blind to what is happening at the borders. People can come in and go out as they wish. And when soldiers are deployed, they are being sent to these areas with nothing to eat. Basically because the exchange rate of the Zimbabwe dollar is so low that even if they give them some money, it won't be enough to buy anything. So soldiers end up committing acts of corruption. They end up being tempted. So for example, if you look around the Beitbridge border, soldiers will be responsible for helping illegal border jumpers to jump into South Africa during this time of coronavirus. This is a very serious issue because the number of coronavirus cases in Zimbabwe will continue to increase. If you look at areas like Mozambique, around that border, smugglers are smuggling goods with the help of soldiers. And this is terrible because what it means is that anything can happen in the country and the Zimbabwe military is basically unable to do anything. So as a solution, she says the Zimbabwe military has been given money by the Minister of Finance to buy drones. So the drones will go out and then they will be looking at whatever is happening at the border. And then the problem with that is that once you see what is happening, you need to react. This is her own words. You need to react, but they do not have enough resources to react. So she said China has given the Zimbabwe military 50 trucks. So as it stands right now, those are the 50 trucks that are being used by the Zimbabwe military. I'm sure you know that the Zimbabwe Air Force no longer has the capacity to fly any jets. So they do not have equipment. I'm sure that even the helicopters, I showed you one last year, in a terrible state. The Zimbabwe military so under-resourced, and that is at the bigger scale of the military, unable to do their job because of lack of funds. Now let's go to the individual soldier. The individual soldier is in a tight spot in Zimbabwe. They do not have rations, which means when they were supposed to get something, they are not getting whatever they were supposed to get. In fact, Oppah Muchinguri said they had requested $500 million from the Minister of Finance and they only got $100 million. So soldiers in Zimbabwe are living a very tough life. Very low salaries. They're also endangered because they have to be patrolling with the police and they're in the front line, exposed to coronavirus, but they do not have the protection that they should have. Instead of going to the barracks to quarantine after deployment, soldiers have to go straight home into the communities where they live because obviously there's nothing to eat in the barracks. So a soldier who was deployed in town to enforce the quarantine has to go straight home, exposing his family, exposing the community. However, she says there's insurance for 6 months, which is covering these soldiers who are on the front line, including also nurses and police. They're covered by this insurance. I think it's coming from Econet, if I'm not mistaken, EcoCash. So this is what the government of Zimbabwe has had to do. They've had to go to private companies to beg for assistance with making sure that the soldiers are safe. At the same time, She says 170 hardcore criminals have escaped who were in South Africa. These were released from South Africa, including murderers and all sorts of hardcore criminals. They escaped from the quarantine centers and now they're in the community. And the soldiers and police are afraid of arresting these people because they could catch coronavirus from these same people. And you know what happens if you catch coronavirus, you could die. And this is the Minister of Defense who said this. There is a full, I think it was about 30 to 40 minutes testimony that she gave in front of that Parliamentary Portifolo Committee on Defense, Home Affairs and Security Services. So it's really sad, the situation that is there in Zimbabwe. I do not know how the situation can be allowed to get to this level, especially at the individual level of a soldier. Now, let's look also at the welfare of a soldier. She said there is a security commission headed by Hungwe that looks at the welfare of defense forces. That means that the soldiers. However, she also mentioned that although Mnangagwa and Mthuli promised to open garrison shops, these garrison shops were not open. So this is where soldiers were supposed to get goods at a cheap price. This has not been done. And I do not know why it was not done. I don't think Zimbabwe has a lot of soldiers, so much such that they cannot open these shops. So she's saying now what they're doing is that they're giving hampers to the soldiers which are lowly priced. So I don't know what can be in a hamper. Probably this is also donated by private sector. But the situation is very bad in the defense forces in terms of the morale of a soldier. In fact, this is almost slavery right now to be a soldier in Zimbabwe. You are someone who is really struggling to survive. She didn't mention the issue of uniforms. I'm sure that is also affecting the soldiers. That if you look at the Zimbabwean soldier now, the way they look, I'm sure they're not looking as presentable as they should be. Right, so I think I've covered what she said about the soldiers, what she said about their conditions of service. I've covered the issue of Zimbabwe failing to patrol the 3,000 kilometers of border, ordering drones. But after they order those drones, they will probably be useless because they won't be able to react whenever there is something that happens at the borders. I want to quickly go to the issue of the deployment in Mozambique. Oppah Muchinguri was not clear in this answer. She was asked if Zimbabwe is deployed in Mozambique. I think her answer leaves a lot to be desired. She instead mentioned that Zimbabwe has been deployed with SADC in Mozambique, in Malawi, and also in Lesotho, where there's a facilitator. But she did not give a clear answer of whether Zimbabwe have got men on the ground in Mozambique as part of SADC or as part of just Zimbabwe. She did not give a clear answer on that. And you can always go and look at that interview online. If you Google Oppah Muchinguri, you will see the interview there where she was giving oral testimony in the Parliamentary Portifolo Committee. Then, obviously, as part of this testimony, she also talked about allegations of a coup. That there are people who are spreading allegations of a coup. It is known that people like Godfrey Tsenengamu have given Mnangagwa 10 days up to the 7th of July. Nothing has happened to those people. So I do not understand why she's blaming the media for talking about the coup. The information is out there in the public domain. There are Twitter accounts that belong to Matema Danda and SK Moyo that have been talking about a coup, about people wanting to take over by force. The ZANU-PF youth leaders of all the 10 provinces were out talking about supporting Idi Mnangagwa. So don't blame the media. Sort out your own house in ZANU-PF. These are the people who are generating the narrative of a coup. And also, the media can say whatever they like. It's not lies. That is how social media works. We talk about whatever we like. So if I see a story about a coup we talk about that story, it doesn't mean that we're spreading the coup. That story is being spoken about because it's already in the public domain. And the fact that she's answering that very question in Parliament means something. It means this is a very serious concern, this issue of a possible coup in Zimbabwe. So I do not think blaming the media or saying we're doing something about the media is the solution. You must be doing something about the root cause. Then your issues will be solved. Then I think I'll end with coronavirus. She said the Zimbabwe Defence Forces has got factories that have been manufacturing sanitizers, and they're even exporting those sanitizers because Zimbabwe has got factories. So that is the first thing. Then she also said China made some donations and they also imported some other PPEs from China. And then the government has delivered or has made available over $1 billion for coronavirus-related operations. In terms of roadblocks, she says the roadblocks have been stopped because of complaints, so there are no more night roadblocks, and vendors have started to move again into town. And she said if people want the roadblocks, she can bring them back because obviously they took them out. I'm sure it's also related to how do you pay these people who will be deployed to do the coronavirus operations. Right, I want to conclude by saying the situation in Zimbabwe needs urgent action, because now if you have a military that is not able to do much, that is the bottom of wherever we're going. We're now at the bottom of the barrel. So something needs to be done on the political level because they are failing to make sure that the military is provided for. Security of the country is at a very bad state. In terms of salaries for soldiers and the welfare of soldiers, it's a very big concern. It's no longer a pride to be a soldier. And then obviously there's also the issue of it's not only salary. You can do other things to make sure that the soldiers are catered for. You can give land, you can give a lot of other things. I think the guys are just not thinking hard enough. There's a lot of resources in the country. And I want to end by saying this was the first time that a Minister of Defense had testified in front of a Portfolio Committee on Defense, Home Affairs and Security Service, according to her, in a very, very long time. So this is the summary of what I wanted to say today. The Zimbabwe Defence Forces failing to patrol the borders of Zimbabwe, according to the Minister of Defense herself. And the situation among soldiers, terrible and very low morale among the soldiers because of the conditions of service. Right, thank you very much for watching. If you're watching this on WhatsApp, send it to as many people as possible.